Frontier have just released a new 2-minute long gameplay clip of Jurassic World Evolution 3. Now there's no new species, but there's lots of new terrain stuff, building stuff and exhibit building in general. Lots of cool stuff to check out, let's dig into it. We start with our new maintenance ATV zooming out of a Japanese themed staff area. Now we've already seen this area in the earlier trailers, but from this view we can make out not only those flashing red lights along the ground, but the red and white no entry strip and signs to the side of the entranceway. Possibly custom written ones. If Planet Zoo on console can do it, then surely Jurassic World Evolution 3 can as well. And that would be huge for making custom park areas and stuff. Imagine you could write a little sign saying, you know, Cretaceous Canyon and pop that into your park. That'd be fantastic. I'm hoping some of the other stuff, you know, the red and white strip and the lights, kind of designates an area as staff only, stopping guests from wandering in and letting us have proper dedicated staff sections. Next, there's a nice close-up view of the Brachiosaurus, still sounding absolutely incredible. It's got this soft green coloration, looks like a unpatterned variation here. The ATV fixes up the fence and we're on our way again. Now that is the role of these new ATV vehicles. They are essentially on fence fix-up duty and building repairs in general. They are a speedy, nimble way to nip around your park and deal with emergencies rather than using those big, cumbersome ranger vehicles from the first game. You'll notice as we zip along here, this huge amount of foliage on display. It really is varied and colourful in a whole new way with, thankfully, and this is a big thing for me, lots of medium-sized brushes and such. The last game suffered from having mainly low-lying or very tall plant life, and here it looks like we're going to have a really nice middle ground. We'll talk more about the foliage very soon. Now, I did actually get a specific request on Reddit to address some things, so I'm going to do that very quickly here. If you actually look to the very bottom right of the screen, you'll see this 90% during this clip of the ATV. Now, there was initially some very early panic that this was part of the build complexity limit sort of thing. However, it doesn't appear to be the case. A, I'm pretty sure this was recorded on PC, which doesn't have a limit. And B, it would be slightly strange to have it on the screen anyway at all times. But really the main way we know it's not is because if you watch this clip through and focus on the bottom right, you'll see that the 90% drops to 89% when the fence is fixed. That suggests that this is a park in desperate need of repair, lots of things to fix, but it does seem to be a tracking meter of some form for how broken your park currently is and how much you need to go to repair it to get it all shipshape. There is going to be a building limit of some form on consoles though, we've had that confirmed already. We just don't know how generous that's going to be. Frontier themselves called it generous, we'll have to wait and see how it plays out in reality. Because it is now time to build an exhibit, with the showcase showing just how quickly you can build a beautiful, detailed, naturalistic dinosaur habitat. They start by carving a pit into the earth itself, revealing the way the terrain colour will naturally shift from grassland to this rocky cliff face sort of texture when you make a steep embankment. A steep embankment that was absolutely impossible with the last game's tools. Our terrain adjustment tools are also a lot more detailed. We've got one continuous bar with decimal numbers for things like radius and intensity, rather than relying on the regimented pip system we had in the past game. That same terrain modification is true for the water as well. The shallow water brush here adds this patchy, half grassy, half stony texture, whereas the deep water in the middle is too deep to show the bottom. Both have the same options, radius, intensity and slope, and in particular I think slope is interesting, especially in the context of deep water. A high slope value like this makes it easy for your dinosaurs to walk down into the water, but what if we shifted that the other way to a very low slope value? Could we create essentially cliffs beneath the water that would act as this kind of natural moat, natural barrier? Like, you know, when you walk into the ocean and you're just walking along, it's just getting a little bit deeper, and you suddenly hit a point where it feels like the earth just disappears below your feet. You know, how close are we going to be able to get to that? They then start working on a raised ledge in the middle, but there's a little detail here you may miss along the way. As they raise the terrain, it actually cuts away the water that's been placed. Now this isn't a big deal, but in the past games, if water was there, it would simply stop you using the terrain tools in that area. Now the water seems to adapt to the terrain rather than blocking it entirely, which is a really positive change if that's the case. Once the ledge is built, they shift over to the nature tab and oh boy, there's going to be a lot of rocks. It looks like it's part of the arid and barren painting set. And whilst we've seen rocks sort of naturally populate dug-in caverns in the earlier trailers, it looks like we'll also have the option to just really directly paint them onto the landscape. It's very, very intensely rocky, so I'm interested to see how much more sporadic it could look at lower intensities, because this is probably a little bit too much for me, so I want to see how much control we have on the density and size here. There's also several other rocky looking terrain options in the arid choices, so that's promising. Maybe some of those are a little bit smaller. As is of course the fact that all of these are clearly accessible in one map. They seem to have basically done away with a biome system entirely and instead are grouping terrain paints by what they provide or how they look visually. We'll talk more about that in a sec. Leaf, fibre, fruit and nut, sounds like a cereal, they're all back. These are the various natural ways you're going to feed your herbivores. They seem to provide the same stuff as last time, but the exciting bit of course is that every brush that you paint with now has varied plants built into it. You're not painting one type of tree here, one type of grass here. You're painting this bucket of various plants that naturally spread and propagate as they should. And that's going to make creating big sweeping habitats so much faster and more naturally natural. Of course, I'm sure you can still place all your individual trees and get really anal about it if you would like, but if you want to go nice and quick, you've now got that choice. And a lovely bit of new detail here, you're going to need to provide cover for your dinosaurs. Pausing on this woodland cover button shows us a big uptick to their cover. It's part of pasture and cover. Now we believe this is going to be part of the breeding system. You know, dinosaurs are going to need appropriate cover to be able to breed happily because not everyone's an exhibitionist. Some of us are, but not everyone's an exhibitionist. But it would be really cool if as an extra little bit of detail, some dinosaurs were naturally a little bit more show-offy than others. Some dinosaurs maybe like the limelight and like seeing the guests, whereas some maybe require a little bit more cover, somewhere they can hide. You know, their social battery drains, they need to get out of there. I think we've all been there before. Wetland provides us our lily pad options over the water, and by the looks of the scroll bar here, that's it. So you've got your food options, your fibre and such. You've got pasture and cover. Pasture is an interesting choice of words. I wonder if we'll need these large grazing areas. We've got arid and barren, and we've got wetlands, and they're the 4 groups we'll be using. Now, of course, each group has a lot of variety within it, but I will say that all of them, if we look at, say, pasture here, they look to be suitable biomes for this specific environment. There's no dense tropical wilderness in there from what I can tell. Now that doesn't mean that won't be an option through manual plant placement, but it does look like the terrain brushes are going to be specific to each map and the biome of that map. The same sort of looks like it applies to the rocks as well. We'll have to see. I don't know if they'll be the same or if they'll change depending on the map. Next, they very quickly put together a 2-tier waterfall by just dabbing a little bit with the water brush. It's dead easy, dead simple, and is it me or do these waterfalls already look a lot better than the ones we saw in the past? There was a pretty common criticism of the ones we saw in the gameplay trailer that they looked a little bit plasticky, maybe a little bit fake. It didn't really look like running water. I was excited about it anyway, but they could have done with some improvement. But here they look a lot more frothy, they look rapid. That white coloration and that movement is doing a lot to make them feel like a real waterfall. It's a lot more realistic than the ones we saw in the past. Shifting onto building now, and we can see the classic hatchery returning, but with a new secondary option. Perhaps all the visual alternates for buildings will now be contained in one folder, quote unquote. That would make a lot more sense than the giant picture lists we got in Evolution 2. But what's really interesting here is that one of these hatcheries, the one that's been clicked on, is noticeably smaller than the other. But it looks to be a regular sized hatchery. Now I don't think we're getting different hatchery sizes for different animals, so it's probably just a pic that maybe needs updating. There's also the custom build option if you want to create your own hatchery designs. Curious to see how complicated they'll be able to be, because you'd assume for a hatchery quite a lot of it is necessary, right? That big bit at the front with the gates and the foliage, you kind of need that bit, so how custom can we really go? It's an exciting idea all the same. And of course, if you don't want to deal with that yourself, there's Community Creations tab. You can go peruse everyone else's custom built hatcheries, don't do any work yourself, have a lovely time. big brain. Anyways, immediately after that, we see something else that's really exciting. Paths. P for path. Lots and lots of paths. And this is only half of them. We've got the 3 varied sizes back, but we've got tons of variety of colour and texture within the available options. We've got a facility path. This one's actually named in the clip. We've got a brick path, we've got this grassy looking path, we've got one that looks a bit more like tarmac, we've got one that looks a little bit more like gravel, and if you look at the size of the scroll bar, this only looks to be about half the list, so we're going to have a lot more variety in path options this time around. That same increased variety also goes for the rocks, because, oh boy, that's a lot of rocks. And again, this is only a sliver of the options available, probably about a quarter given the size of the scroll bar. We've got desert rocks, we've got darker tropical rocks, we've got moss covered rocks, we've got snowy rocks, all ones you'll recognise if you've played Planet Zoo. And they can be brought really easily into your parks. You don't always need to go in with the big widget and your XYZ rotation and all this kind of jazz. You can just plop it in, rotate it on its own axis like you would place any other item, and it clips nicely through various objects in the process. It's really cool customizability. The final result of all of this work is this beautiful Triceratops habitat, which really didn't take much time at all to build. I get why people are excited for things like the juvenile dinosaurs, but for me, these better terrain tools, these vastly better terrain tools, are the real highlight of Jurassic World Evolution 3. Saying that, this shot of the lagoon might look even better. Okay, the lagoon itself looks basically the same, externally at least. But the landscape around it with those myriad waterfalls, we've got slopes, we've got cliff edges, we've got rocky outcroppings, we've got pools, we've got rivers. It's just absolutely beautiful, it really is. It's the type of super naturalistic environment. I really nearly did supercalifragilisticexpialidocious there. I've been dying to make in these games for ages. And of course the lagoon benefits from being able to bring those rocks and those rocky outcroppings over into the edges to make it more seamlessly blend in with the environment around it. Now, thinking about it, I don't think we'd be able to make waterfalls fall into the lagoon in the same way because they use regular terrain, they're not like a placed item in the way that the rocky outcroppings are. But you know what? That would be really, really cool. So, Frontier, if you're listening, maybe one day? We finish with another adorable look at the Mosasaurus family, showcasing not only them, but the vastly improved lagoon customization underneath the water. As you can see, we've got kelp and seagrasses of various sizes, but much more excitingly, I think the Mosas are swimming through a cove underneath this rocky overhang. Caves are possible both above and below the water. I'm really curious if they've changed how lagoon customization works, because I think building in this way with this level of detail would have been a bit of a nightmare in Jurassic World Evolution 2. What I'd really love to see is the ability to enter like a lagoon customization mode, remove the water, give us a proper view of what it's going to look like, and then let us sculpt and build like we would a terrestrial exhibit, basically. I've got to say, this little baby Mosa is maybe my favourite of the juveniles so far. Playfully swimming along, those gigantic cute eyes, heartbreaking. And swimming along through another beautiful rock archway, this time surrounded by a variety of corals. They don't seem to be big hunks of rock placed down as in Jurassic World Evolution 2, so maybe we'll get specific lagoon terrain painting brushes as we do on the land. Anyways, after another shot of that adorable interjuvenile social animation, wonderfully animated as they all are, we get to see some sexual dimorphism in the Mosas with this 4 Mosa family unit. Now I'm really hoping they'll school together like this and it's not just, you know, trailer bait. We know juveniles will follow their parent at least, but will they form a full family unit like this? But either way, the female Mosa here is not only shorter and slimmer than the male counterpart, but the ridges along the tail are less prominent and they end a lot sooner than the male. She's only got like 5 little ridges, whereas the males have 15 plus. Anyways, I've talked for a very long time about a 2-minute clip, but there's a lot to talk about, there's a lot to get excited about. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comment section down below. Stick around for lots more Jurassic World Evolution 3, of course, and I hope you all have a lovely week. Thank you for joining me. Cheers much love as always. Bye-bye.